A January 6th copycat on January 8th. Supporters of former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro are storming Congress, angry at his election loss in October, coming a week to the day since his predecessor Lula entered office. They've also stormed the presidential palace and the high court. Most governmental office buildings are empty. It's a Sunday, but these angry protesters are causing some damage, and scenes very much reminiscent to the storming of the U.S. Capitol in 2020. So joining us now to understand, to explain rather, the current mayhem and what are we to expect. I-24 News senior correspondent Bianca Zanini. Happening as we speak.
Yes.
What's happening?
Happening as we speak. I've got my phone right here, following closely on Twitter, where we keep seeing new footage coming out, new images, new information. About an hour ago, hundreds of protesters, most of them dressed in the Brazilian flag color, so yellow and green, that's typical for the Bolsonaro supporters, stormed the National Congress, and they began breaking things inside. Shortly thereafter, we started seeing images from inside the Supreme Court and also from the Planalto Palace, which is the official workplace of the president. So essentially what we're seeing right now is that all three powers of democracy, all three buildings representing those powers of democracy, the symbols, have been taken over by Bolsonaro supporters. And if you listen to what they're yelling, it is Lula ladrão, Lula ladrão. That's Lula is a thief. Essentially, they do not, they refuse the election results that Lula won. It was by a very thin margin, 50.9%. It happened back in October, and he was inaugurated just 1 week ago today. And they're essentially refusing to accept this and saying that it was fraudulent, that everything was fake, and then they're calling for a military intervention. I mean, they have been camped, many of them have been camped outside of the army headquarters in the capital of Brasilia for weeks. And essentially they're asking for the military, which they see as their ally, to come in, to stage a coup. The military is not going to do that. They have not had shown any indication that they were about to do that. They're interested in doing that or anything at all. What we're seeing, on the other hand, is military police responding with tear gas and clashes. We're starting to see that now. They were rather quick, but of course, at the same time, what we're asking, what everyone's really asking, is how did this happen? I mean, we're not talking about 20, 30 people. We're talking about hundreds, if not thousands of people. We've got kilometers of people walking in and walking in. Some are even reporting that they're talking about people being bussed in to the center.
So it was not sporadic. It was well planned, well orchestrated.
That's what it's looking like right now. It was, it's, you know, it's still very unclear,
we don't
but
have
absolutely that's what it looks like right now.
Well, speaking of well planned, well orchestrated, we can say that our jaws are dropped to an extent. The stage has been set to these sorts of events, or at least to the notion of undermining the credibility of election result. As you've said, there was no landslide victory here, far from it.
It wasn't, and the country is deeply divided at this moment. I know that this is a phrase that journalists like to say all the time. The country is divided. Brazil is really, truly, deeply divided. I mean, again, 50.9%, and a lot of the voters were not just voting for a candidate; they were voting against the other candidate. There's a lot of deep-seated hatred and a lot of clashing values here. And what we're seeing in the past few weeks is essentially, like you said, setting the stage for this. On the one hand, this is shocking. It's surprising. On the other hand, it really isn't. I mean, we saw police clashes with police. We saw people camping outside of any kind of government building. We've even seen, and this does not happen in Brazil, a failed attempt of bombing a crowd, essentially a terrorist attempt, which is not something we see in Brazil. There's lots of violence, but this is not something that is commonly seen.
Well, we'll have to wait to hear from the man of the hour, Jair Bolsonaro himself.
For now, silent. He is not in the country.
Befitting the trend on his end in recent weeks, keeping everything vague enough. Okay, Bianca Zanini, I-24 News senior correspondent, of course, staying on top of this.